Hello and welcome to Health Quest, dedicated to nutrition and your good health. Support for Health Quest has been provided by some of America's best nutritional companies. And now, Health Quest, with your host, Steve Lankford.
Hello, and welcome back to Health Quest Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Lankford. Thanks for joining me. I'm glad you're here. This is going to be, I think, for me, one of the most intriguing interviews I've done in a long time. If you're a regular listener of Health Quest Podcast, you know that one of my main themes is that you have to have some foundation for having trust in the products that you purchase. We live in a very interesting marketplace now relative to nutritional products. They're readily available. You can find them in drugstores, gas stations, online, all kinds of brands, all kinds of claims. And yet we are uncomfortable because we know that we can't trust all of those resources. And we're also uncomfortable because we don't have a way to understand perhaps how to do that. And my solution has always been to say, vet the companies that you buy your products from. If you find a good company that makes a product that you trust, you like, you have experience, you know something about that company, you can have confidence going forward, perhaps exploring their range of products, having confidence that they apply certain standards and quality to their products. So we're going to find out if that's actually true, if that's actually good advice, because my guest today is Gene Bruno. I have followed Gene for many years. He's been in this industry almost as long as I have. And I have followed him as an author in many of our trade magazines. And some of his articles have been some of, I think, the most profound and truly honest. When I read his articles, I feel like he's giving you the full story, and that impresses me. And so he is somebody that has this kind of background. He has a master's degree in nutrition. He has a second master's degree in herbal medicine. That tells you right there what his history is. 42 years of service in the dietary supplement industry, as I said, almost as long as I have. So he's seen many of these changes over decades that I have observed, and he's been here during the battles that the industry has faced in years past. So he is a formulator of innovative and evidence-based dietary supplements. Pay attention to those two words, innovative and evidence-based. Our industry is based on innovation, looking at what's coming in nutritional science, and now we are clearly in the times where we need evidence-based dietary supplements. That's why this is so important. Gene has this expertise from the side of the manufacturers, the people who actually buy the raw materials, manufacture the products, and create the brands that you and I purchase in the marketplace. So this is a very important topic. It's very near and dear to my heart because I believe as consumers, if we don't get this right, we are at risk for being victims of the marketplace. It sounds too good to be true. It sounds too cheap to be good. Are these things that we need to be concerned about? He is the Vice President of Scientific and Regulatory Affairs at NutraScience Labs, and we'll learn more about them in this discussion. And he's also a professor of nutraceutical science at Huntington University of Health Sciences. That's a very impressive resume and just a short paragraph. So it's in that capacity I'm pleased to introduce to you my guest today, Gene Bruno. Gene, welcome to Health Quest Podcast.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you for the kind words. And I love the opportunity to speak to somebody who has been involved in this industry as long or longer than I have. So I'm pretty excited about that myself. And certainly the topic that we're going to discuss today is near and dear to my heart, something I've written articles about, something I've spoken at industry trade shows about, and something I've done webinars about, because it really is true. Caveat emptor, buyer beware when a consumer goes out and buys a supplement. It's a crapshoot. You just don't know if what you're getting is real or fake or somewhere on a sliding scale in between. So I think it's really, really important to provide some guidelines to people so that they have some basis for making a value judgment.
It's a shame in my mind that we actually have to have this discussion. And just as a quick aside, is it fair to lay this at the feet of the FDA, who has done what I consider not a very good job of enforcing supplement regulations? Are they a big part of this problem?
That's a very good question. Over the years, I have had, working for manufacturers, FDA visits where somebody will come, they will do an inspection. You'd think it would happen a whole lot more often than it does. But when I've talked to FDA representatives, what I can honestly tell you is they have said to me, in all candor, they are just understaffed. They don't have the people to enforce it. So it's often said that the dietary supplement industry is an unregulated industry. Well, that's not true. We have plenty of regulations. Enforcement of the regulations is a different issue. And that is something that, due to a lack of manpower, they just aren't able to do. So yes, FDA is at fault, but then I guess the American government is at fault for not fully funding them. There's a number of other avenues to take here, and it's an ongoing issue. The enforcement isn't all there. We have to take things into our own hands and make sure that the products that we're taking are, as I said, real.
Well, I think that it might be fair to say that the regulations exist, and they are good regulations by and large. Our industry is able to function effectively within the framework of that regulations. And the companies that you work with, I suspect, and many, or if not all of the good companies, do follow these regulations, and they seek to do this. It is the outliers, the ones who really are not in it for the long-term value of either their company, the consumers, and the marketplace in general, that we have to watch out for. And so this lack of oversight and manpower, and that's understandable. Certainly, I think we can all appreciate that. And maybe overregulation is also the other side of that coin. But the idea that if you can identify companies that do adhere by these standards and then apply a rigorous scientific evidence-based look at their raw materials, those are the companies that exist. Those are the companies I know that you help, and these are the companies that consumers have to learn how to perhaps identify. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. You really put your finger on it, because there's a number of really, really good companies that play by the rules. But then there are other companies that just don't play by the rules, and they're flying under the radar. Unless they get reported to the FDA and an investigation is underway, they just continue to get away with doing the wrong thing and providing products that are not evidence-based, that don't have in them what they're supposed to, that the testing isn't there, and so forth and so on. So you're right. That is the problem. Many good companies, and unfortunately, many not-so-good companies as well.
Well, now that we've sort of identified that, we'll just push that off to the side, because that sort of speaks to why you're here today, to address how to find those good companies. Before we get into that, though, Gene, could you just tell us a little bit about your history and kind of what led you into this passion for nutrition and science that you have?
Sure. My story began before I was born. Don't worry, it's not going to be a long one. My maternal grandmother had cancer. She had lymphosarcoma, and this was back in the early 50s. And at the time, they didn't have chemotherapy or radiation therapy. The only medical treatment was surgery, remove the tumor. If it grows back, remove it again. If you remove it enough times and it keeps coming back, you tell the patient to put their affairs in order, and that's exactly what happened to my grandmother. She was basically given 6 months to live. At the time, she lived in New York, and she was referred to a doctor named Max Gerson, who was somebody who was an MD who believed that the body was capable of many things, including healing itself, if it had the right nutrition, if it was properly detoxified, and several other things. So she went to see this guy, and long story short, she got well. Her multiple tumors disappeared, and I was born. I got to know my grandmother, and when she died, it was not from a degenerative disease. And as a young child, when I would hear somebody say, oh, so-and-so has cancer, and it sounded like this death sentence, in my own little ignorant child way, I would say, oh, well, they just do what grandma did. Seemed like a logical thing. And then I came to understand that that's not how things were typically done in modern medicine. I wanted to understand more about that, and it really inspired me. So that's why I ended up getting into this business, understanding the role of nutrition, understanding the role that dietary supplements can play. And it's a business that I have to be in this business. It's what I have the passion for. It's what I do. And in this business, I started out doing retail, and then I worked in outside sales, and then I worked in education and formulation, and I've been in doing that sort of thing for a long time now. I've seen the profound role that well-formulated dietary supplements can play in a person's health and wellness program, how it can just make a huge difference in their lives. And I've also seen how people can get very discouraged using supplements when they're not well formulated and they don't do anything for them. And it gives the industry a bad name. So that's a little bit about my background. And you already mentioned the education part of it and went to school to learn what I needed to learn to be effective at what I do. And now I work with NutriScience Labs, who of course manufactures dietary supplements.
Yes. Tell us just a little bit then about NutriScience Labs and sort of the breadth of their involvement.
NutriScience Labs was originally founded in 2001. It used to be known as NutriCap Labs, but changed the name to NutriScience Labs. And we've been part of a larger company called Twin Lab Consolidation Corporation, which is a family of different companies that are all dietary supplement related. And NutriScience Labs is headquartered in Long Island in New York. And it provides dietary supplement brand owners with I like to call it a best-in-class contract manufacturing and packaging and labeling and fulfillment services, sort of all under one roof, a one-stop shop. The staff collectively possesses over 120 years of nutraceutical industry experience, 42 of which are from me. And we produce and ship from our facility over 3,000 unique products every year. And people who are interested in starting their own dietary supplement line, they can contact NutriScience Labs at NutriScienceLabs.com. Or they can even do a phone call 855-492-7388, and they can speak to one of our representatives. We have many knowledgeable representatives that we fully train and educate to be able to answer the questions that somebody interested in starting their own brand can address.
Well, I got to think, as you were describing that many of the companies, and it's not always easy to know who is who, but many companies are not going to invest the millions of dollars that it takes to set up these quality labs, these quality manufacturing, these FDA certified facilities in order to manufacture their products. They're more interested in getting their products to the marketplace. And so you kind of fill that void for them. That's what it means to be a contract manufacturer, correct? That you do this on behalf of customers to their specifications, their raw materials, and so on.
That's it precisely. And one of the things that the NutriScience Labs also does is, besides doing the manufacturing and packaging and labeling, the fact that we also offer fulfillment services. So in other words, we can keep the product at our facility, ship it out to wherever. You don't have to have your own warehouse. Everything that you need basically to get the product produced and distributed, we can provide, and we can take it one step further. Most contract manufacturers, if you know exactly what you want and you hand them a formula, they'll say, yes, we can make that for you. But if you say, I want a product for, let's say, menopause or prostate health or whatever, they don't really do that. They just say, well, tell us what you want and we'll make it. They won't actually formulate it for you. They don't necessarily have people who do conceptual formulation. NutriScience Labs actually offers that service as well. And generally that's me doing that formulation. It's a really soup to nuts process of formulation, manufacturing, and fulfillment that is offered by NutriScience Labs. It's a little unique.
Well, it's interesting. I've been at the website, and I was going to suggest to my listeners, they may want to go here as well and look around. You don't have to be a supplement manufacturer to gain some insight from some of the content that you have on your site. So
you're right.
I really love the idea that you talk about what products are trending in the marketplace and why they're trending. So for a consumer, if they want to know something, they can learn about some of the products the ideas conceptually that you've already vetted and put there in your blogs. Even if it's for manufacturers, consumers can actually benefit from that. I know I did, seeing the range of nutrients that you recommended in this particular topic. So I really like that. So tell us about that website just a little bit.
Yeah, so the website, besides just, of course, providing business-type information, there's a lot of content. And the content, unlike, let's say, just a dietary supplement company who's trying to sell a very specific branded product, this one is talking about things in a general, generic way where research is provided. You can learn about a given nutraceutical. You can learn about, as you say, trends that are going on. Every single article, every single blog post, every single video that's on there is done in a general way which is applicable to just about any kind of brand out there, assuming they're using good materials. So the information really is usable across the board, from consumers to brand owners, to explain, teach, educate about nutraceuticals, how they work, what the science is, and, as you say, what the trends are. It's important to understand the trends as well, because that plays into just the whole issue of what's popular, what the research is going to be done on, and what makes sense. And sometimes you get something that's really, really popular, and there's really no science behind it. It just happens to be popular for one reason or another. So even knowing that information can be extremely valuable. So we're very proud and excited to offer that kind of information to the public. That's what people need to understand. That's what they need to know about, and that's part of what we're there to provide.
Well, we're in this together, trying to sort of bridge the gap from companies like yours, which are very much in touch with the raw materials and the quality issues and the trends that are emerging out there, and the rest of us who are very interested in seeing how those things develop. We want to know what these new and trending products are and which ones of those that we can have confidence in. One bit of advice I often recommend is, if you're not sure, look for branded, trademarked, clinically studied ingredients. And when you find those, that's one of your keys to success with a product and success with a company that chooses to invest in those, because that's going to be typically the more expensive ingredient, and with good reason. Is that good advice?
That's excellent advice. I tell you, Steve, that is probably one of the single best pieces of advice you can give. When you're using a trademarked ingredient that, as you say, companies, raw material suppliers will put money into it, meaning that they will put money into conducting human clinical research on their materials. So they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're saying, look, we're studying this in humans. We're demonstrating that it has efficacy. We're demonstrating that it has safety. It's one thing to be able to say, oh, there's a given nutraceutical that has a history of use or people are excited about it. And it's another to say, hey, we've actually studied this in humans. We found that it actually works. It has these specific measurable effects, and that it's safe to use, and it's safe to use on an ongoing basis. And most people don't take the time to determine if product claims are based on real science or marketing science. And going with trademarked materials can be a big advantage in trying to make sure that what you're using is correct. Now, not every trademarked material has a lot of research, but a lot of them do. And that's what's so important. So yeah, Steve, we are on the same page there. That is, I think, just a great recommendation to make. I would also encourage people, even if you're not a big science person, to just go to PubMed, the PubMed website, and just play around with a little bit. Go in and type in something you want to know about. Like maybe you want to type in curcumin and arthritis or something, and then it comes up. And you can click on things and say, okay, I just want it to be human research, or et cetera. And you can find all kinds, you can click on all of the links and it'll bring you to studies after studies on a given topic. And you can see what's real. Oh, look. Yes, there are studies on curcumin for arthritis. Oh, look, here's the form that was used. Oh, here's the amounts that were used. And you can learn something about it. If you're interested in the topic, it's a great way to educate yourself. And I say PubMed as opposed to a lot of other websites out there, because a company that is trying to sell their own products, they may give really good, legitimate information, or they may say stuff that helps to sell their products but isn't always quite as accurate. And so it's nice to go to a place that's totally impartial and read the research. So that's something that I do like to encourage people to do.
Well, I like to think that the people who listen to my podcast are people who are serious about understanding these issues. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking, and so somebody has to be interested in what it is that we're saying. And this is something that's been a part of my message for a long time as this sort of industry and the challenges have emerged over the last decade. In the communications that you and I had, one of the questions that you posed to me is, how would someone know if the dietary supplement is real or fake, and what do they look for? That seems like a huge challenge, Gene, so I'm looking to you to give us some good guidance that we can rely on.
I say there's questions that need to be asked and need to be answered. I mentioned one before, which is it based on real science or marketing science? And one of the things you can always do when you're talking to a company, if you're on their website or if you're calling them, is if you see an ingredient and in a product, it's perfectly okay to contact that company, their customer service, whoever, and say, hey, I see you have ingredient X in this product. I see you have it at, say, 50 milligrams. Can you direct me to any science that shows that that ingredient in the amount you provided actually is effective for people for the purpose intended? So that's one way you can check on the real science. You can also look and see if they give you any references on their website, which you can follow up with. And of course, you can go to PubMed and check some of that out for yourself. One of the things that also you want to ask is the type and the amount of the nutraceutical that's put in the product, is it consistent with the research? I can't tell you how many times I've looked at a product. I used the example of curcumin before. And let's say the study shows you need 1,000 milligrams of a certain form of curcumin to be effective. Well, you look at a product and it says, we've got 50 milligrams. I'm like, yes, so what? That's not going to do anything. There's no research showing 50 milligrams of curcumin is going to do jack. You need to use a correct amount. And so that's another question to ask is, does the product have the right amount? And is it in the form that is going to be absorbed and utilized? You have some data showing that. Another thing you need to take a look at, you need to ask, is if you order a product and you want to try it out, and let's say you use a bottle of a product, let's say the bottle lasts 30 days. You say, oh, either it's going to move the dial or it's not. After 30 days, if it works, great. If it doesn't, it's not going to work. Well, that may or may not be true. For example, let's say you're using a product for prostate health. Well, most of the research on products for prostate health, normally men who have enlarged prostates and they're looking for something to help, most of the studies are done over a 3-month period. And a lot of times they don't tend to see any significant results until closer to that 3-month mark. So sometimes using a single bottle may not be enough, so you need to give it a fair try. But, again, if you do your research and you look it up, you'll get a better idea of that too. And this also leads me to looking at directions on labels. Are the correct directions given? Does it tell you how much to take? Does it say, take 2 capsules 3 times a day? Or does it just say, take 1 or more daily, which is kind of cheesy directions that aren't very good? Does it tell you if you need to take it with food or without food? Does it give you good directions? That's another thing to look for. And the other thing is, you mentioned about a brand that you can trust. So one of the questions you can always ask, contact the company and say, who formulated the products? You want to know if they're formulated by someone who has knowledge and experience. And this is important because I can't tell you how many times I've come across brands where a product is formulated by marketing people or salespeople. Okay? And sometimes the marketing people might have a little bit of knowledge, but that's not the same as somebody with a science background who actually understands human anatomy and physiology, understands how things work in the body, and has been trained in it, formulating a correct product. I can't tell you how many times I've seen stuff combined together where I'm like, oh, you don't want to combine that together. That's a problem. Those things aren't going to work when you combine them together. Or they're going to compete for absorption. Or they're going to cancel each other out in some way. Steve, you might remember some years back, strontium was becoming very popular as a dietary ingredient to be used in bone health products. Do you remember that? Strontium was getting popular. Well, I would often see strontium combined with calcium, except for one small problem, you see. They compete with each other for absorption in the intestinal tract. So if you take a product that has both strontium and calcium, one or the other isn't going to get absorbed.
Yes, that's what I remember.
Yeah, I would see that right and left. Oh, we put strontium in our calcium formulas. Really? Why are you doing that? That's not a smart thing to do. Is it formulated by somebody with knowledge and experience? Ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. Do you trust the company? Is it a new company? Is it an old company? Just because it's a new company doesn't mean it's not good, but they got to be able to answer the questions. And just because it's an old company doesn't mean that everything they have is good, but if they've been around a long time, they're probably around because they're selling some products that are actually working and doing stuff for people. Otherwise, people wouldn't keep buying it. So that is helpful, but you can still be a new company and you can gain consumer trust by doing things the right way. And another thing is to say, is the supplement company manufacturer GMP certified? Now, this is important. GMP certification, and there's a few different kinds, but GMP certification means that a third-party auditor comes and checks out the manufacturer and goes through a whole checklist of processes and determines that that manufacturer is following GMPs, which stands for Good Manufacturing Practices, okay? And good manufacturing practices are dictated in the regulation. The Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994 states that the manufacturer needs to be following GMPs. Well, that's great. Not everybody does, or sometimes people say we are. But here's the thing. Can you prove it? And the way that you prove it is having a third-party verification, where a third party like NSF, which is a big organization in the dietary supplement industry, who does just that. They go around, they audit, they check. And if you pass, you get your GMP certification. And that's one of the things that NutriScience Labs does, is it has the GMP certification. So you want to look at that. Doesn't mean that if a manufacturer doesn't have it, they're not following GMPs, but you don't have any real way to verify it. And looking at a GMP certified facility is a smart way to go. What I think is really, really important is to ask these questions. Contact the company you're interested in purchasing from. Talk to the people. If you're buying it at retail in a brick and mortar store, talk to the people there. See if they're knowledgeable. See if they know about the company. If they don't, call the company directly or contact them online and ask your questions. Don't be afraid to ask, okay? And if they can't answer them, you may want to look elsewhere and find another company that can answer those questions. It's just so important to use products that have clinically relevant doses of the nutraceuticals in their product and are doing it in the right way, manufacturing it correctly. That, to me, is the fundamental issue there. Correctly formulated and correctly manufactured. If you can get that, you have products that have a very, very good chance of working very well. Because look, everybody's different. Same thing isn't going to work for everybody, but you got a much better chance of it working if it's well formulated and well manufactured. So those are some things. I personally despise the practice of fairy dusting, where you put in a little bit of something and say, oh, it's got this nutraceutical, but you don't put enough in. You just sprinkle a little bit in there so you can say it's there. One of the things that I've seen many times, too, is just incorrect information given. Like, for example, let's say you have a product and let's say you're a woman and you have menopause and you have some menopausal symptoms like hot flashes and you're looking for something to help. Or maybe you read something about, say, black cohosh, that's helpful. And indeed, there's a lot of science on black cohosh root extract that is standardized for 2.5% triterpene glycosides. If it's that kind of an extract and you're using 40 milligrams of it, research shows that tends to be very effective when used on an ongoing basis for hot flashes and other symptoms of menopause. Fantastic. So you look at a product and it says, does it have that? Great. But you have to look carefully, because sometimes you see it'll say 40 milligrams black cohosh root extract, but it doesn't tell you, is it standardized for the triterpene glycosides? It doesn't tell you that. If it doesn't tell you that, it probably isn't. Or here's one of my least favorite. They'll have a proprietary blend which says, oh, we've got red clover extract, and we have Don Quai, and we have black cohosh, and you have 800 milligrams of stuff. And you're like, okay, great, but do you have 40 milligrams of the right amount and form of black cohosh? And you just don't know, because they mix it all together and don't tell you what's in there. Well, sometimes companies say we use proprietary blends because we're trying to protect our intellectual property so other companies can't copy us. Okay, maybe, but I still won't buy it because I want to see what's in there. I get people all the time, they'll hand me a product and say, is this any good? And I'll say, I don't know, because it's in a proprietary blend. It doesn't tell me how much of anything is there, so I can't really tell you. So these are things to look for and things to consider when you are looking to whether or not a product is going to be effective. You have to spend a little time doing some research, and should you want to start your own brand, then you got to get together with a good contract manufacturer like Nutriscience Labs that can actually help guide you through the process, make sure you're using the right stuff, and that you have evidence-based products.
Well, so as Nutriscience Labs, it sounds like what you do is you do these things so that your customers who are using your services, they can then pass that information on down to the consumer as well.
That's right.
You build this credible operation so that those downstream from you can benefit from that and have confidence. And manufacturers need companies like you, retailers need manufacturers who use companies like you, and consumers need to buy products from retailers who use manufacturers who use companies like yours. So it's a chain of trust that has to be developed. And when you take the retailer out of the picture, which is all too common today and is a trend we all have to deal with, you do remove one of those gatekeepers who in the past has been the resource for so many people to find out who can you trust and what's innovative and get it personal advice based on their situation. That's not so easy these days as it used to be. It's getting harder anyway. So we have to find these new ways to pass along this kind of information so people can make these better decisions. One of the things that came to mind as you were describing these various things that a consumer can look for when they contact a company, here's one of the thoughts I've had about doing exactly that. If the companies that you are interested in don't have a phone number that you can call, that might be a red flag. If they don't have an address that you could drive up and at least go in the front door, that might be a red flag. Mm-hmm. If they're not willing to be transparent about their raw materials or how much they use, that might be a red flag. And conversely, the good companies are really investing a lot in order to be a better top-tier company. They invest in certifications, they invest in manufacturing, they invest in raw materials, and they want the consumers to know that. And so this trend of the term transparency as it relates to nutritional products companies is we do these things. We want you to know. We want to be transparent so you can have confidence in us. Companies that don't want that close connection with their consumers, that might be a red flag. Are those fair assumptions then?
Oh, Steve, those are not only fair, they're excellent. One of the things that always bothered me is when you pick up a product and they have no way to contact them, like you say, no phone number, no address. I mean, you can always look somebody up on the web, but sometimes when you do, you still don't get a phone number or address. You just have a way to maybe email somebody. Hopefully somebody will email you back. And that kind of thing always bothered me, and just for the exact reasons that you indicated. If they're not willing to have that kind of connection with their customers, with consumers, and they're not willing to be transparent, that raises red flags. Willing to put the time, the effort, the money into making sure your products are correct and you can answer your consumers' questions, yeah, that raises red flags. I think those were excellent points, Steve, and I would encourage everybody to take those very seriously and consider that when you're looking for any brand of product out there, just considering anything. And I don't care if it's a drugstore. I've gone into popular chain drugstores before buying something, and I've seen nutritional products on the shelf. You think, oh, it's a popular chain drugstore, it's only going to have stuff that's legit. But I've seen some junk in some of those places too. Because it's a big, large chain doesn't always mean that everything on the shelf there is legit.
Well, it's like when I go in my grocery store and they have the healthy section. Well, just labeling it the healthy section, what does that tell me about the whole rest of your store, perhaps? I might wonder about your commitment to a healthy lifestyle and diet. If it's only to sell it because there's demand for it, I get it. I'm glad my grocery store has it, but I don't fool myself into thinking they understand anything about necessarily the products that they're stocking and why, especially when it comes to dietary supplements. If it sells, great. If it doesn't, it's gone. There's a certain disconnect there that convenience leads us to want this easier access. And speaking of easier access, one of the big problems, it seems, or is perceived to be, is online purchasing. It seems like it's really disrupted a lot of the marketplace, and that there may be good reasons why there are challenges there. What do you think about this online marketplace, and how easy or hard is it for consumers to have access to understanding anything about the products they're buying?
Look, I remember when online purchasing of dietary supplements first began. I remember when it was really small and it only represented about 1% of sales. Boy, has that changed. And people are much more likely to buy products online now, especially since COVID. People are just buying all kinds of stuff online and having it delivered. It's convenient. But the problem is that oftentimes the places that we buy them from really have minimal amounts of information. If you buy them from popular sites, which I'm in no way disparaging, but like places like Amazon or whatever that are just big popular sites that you go to, they have a certain amount of information, but it doesn't really tell you much details about the company, what their standards are, what's important to them as a company. It's just, here it is, here's the price, maybe here's what's in it. And sometimes you have to struggle to even find what's in it. Does it have a supplement facts box? You can't even find it, depending upon what website you go to. I have a lot of concerns about buying a lot of stuff from different online e-tailers because they just don't provide the information you need. And also, as we were talking about in the very beginning of this podcast, you have a lot of good companies and you have a lot of ones that are just fly-by-night stuff that would never have worked its way into a credible vitamin store out there. But you can buy it online and you have access to a lot more junk than you ever did before when it was just in retail. And so it's a great concern to me. I certainly support retailers that are legit retailers. And I'm not against buying products online, but again, caveat emptor, make sure you're buying from a site that provides you with the kind of information you need, and then buy from the sites that do provide you that information and support those sites because they're doing it right.
Well, I think this is one of the things that we are learning about any marketplace, whether it be brick and mortar retail or online, is that we need to separate our choices. We need to narrow it down to what's important to us. So if price is the most important thing and I really could care less about who makes it, that's one thing. It's your money. You get to do that. But if you care and if you know that these challenges exist, then you have some homework to do. And you've done a good job about leading us through some of those things that consumers can look for. I agree that it's work at first. To me, like going through the grocery store and reading labels, it's work at first. But when you identify that which you don't want from that which is passable, then once you've done that work, then it's easy to go in and pick what you've learned to trust. Same thing with the supplements. If you learn about this company, you try their products, you have good results, and all of the things that indicate a good company are there, is it the right product? That's the journey of discovery we each go through. But it starts, if we want to be successful, we have to find that quality. And if you want the results that are shown in the science, look for the products that use the ingredients in the dosage that was used in the science. And you addressed that very well.
Very much so. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I personally do to help assure that is when I formulate myself, I don't just say, okay, here's a formulation that'll work. I actually write a complete white paper on every formula. So I'll have supplement facts box. I'll list each of the ingredients, what their overages should be. I will create a list of compliant claims, and then I will summarize each of the studies that support each of those claims. So I'll read through the research and I'll take it and say, here, this double-blind placebo-controlled study showed XYZ, blah, 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 and it gives the support for it so that when the brand owner gets the product made for them, they know they have a document that shows them everything they need to know to support the claims that they have something that's real. And that's the kind of thing I think is important to do, especially if you're starting out new. You want to start out right and always have good products with good scientific support behind them. And I can't tell you how often companies just don't have that kind of documentation on their product. Many do, but a lot of companies don't.
Well, that's what we're trying to find out. And so we're so close to the end of our time, Gene. As a contract manufacturer, if we have listeners who are interested in contacting you because of their manufacturing interests, how do they go about doing that?
The best thing to do, if they're interested, is just directly contact NutraScience Labs. Now, the way to do that is, again, they can go to the website, NutraScienceLabs.com, or they can actually pick up the phone and they can make a phone call to 855-492-7388. And what they will generally do is direct them to a customer service person who's going to talk to them, figure out what their needs are, figure out where they want to go, and if they want to have something formulated, something special, then they'll bring me into the picture at that point in time. And then I'll get on the phone with the person, I'll do, Zoom meetings, whatever it takes, and make sure that we find the right combination of nutraceuticals and the right kind of product that they want to sell. That's how that'll go.
Sometimes we find a good product that we like. You may be the guy responsible for it. Who knows?
Might be.
But just might be. You've certainly got the creds and the history and the organization to do all that. Well, Gene, I always like to give my guests the last word. Is there anything we didn't cover today that you'd like to make sure our listeners hear?
I really feel like we covered it very well, but I just wanted to add that a lot of times people, when I do shows like these, and questions are asked and I answer those questions, not all that frequently do I get the host that comes back with some really, really equally good advice. And so I was really excited to hear some of the comments that you made because they were very thoughtful and knowledgeable, and I thank you for that. I think it was a real synergistic type of experience, and I love what you had to say and really, really enjoyed this podcast.
Well, Gene, thank you for those kind words. It's a passion for me, as I know it's been for you. You don't exist in an industry like this for over 4 decades if you don't have a passion and a love and a personal relationship with dietary supplements and nutritional foods. And so I thank you for bringing that for all of these years, because we need people like you. We need companies like yours, as so much of what is of benefit to us starts with the beginning of a manufacturing process. So I'm so glad that you helped us understand that today. It was most interesting. I look forward to any opportunities we have to speak. If I might meet you at a trade show, I would love to shake your hand.
I'd love that too.
So until we have that opportunity, Gene, thank you so much. I look forward to any opportunity we have going forward. I wish you the best.
Thank you, Steve. You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If you would like additional information, please visit healthquestpodcast.com. We've provided additional details and links on the podcast page. Remember, this is your process of discovery. Continue to search, continue to learn. The more you know, the better choices you can make. Better choices lead to better outcomes. If you like healthquestpodcast.com, please recommend us to your friends and social networks. We sincerely appreciate every like, every star, and every review. Together, we can lead others to better health, one listener at a time. Thank you for joining me today. I'm glad you were here. Make it a good day and join me for another interesting HealthQuest podcast.
Thank you for joining us today on HealthQuest. You want to improve your health? HealthQuest can help. For more information and interviews that help you, visit healthquestpodcast.com.